Happy to have everybody here to talk about the status of our contract negotiations with Local 341. The short version is they voted overwhelmingly against the proposed contract. The short answer as to what the impact is, there is no immediate impact from this vote. The current contract expires at the end of this month, but we have an existing evergreen clause that carries the contract through the end of 2016, and the interim agreement that we negotiated in March is still in effect as well. I thought the contract was a good proposal that represented good faith negotiations on both sides. I have no idea why it was rejected, and I'm assuming that Mr. Sky Eagle and his team that represented the firefighters in the negotiations will go back and try to figure out what the major holdup was. We're always willing to go back to the table, and certainly since we have 2.5 years under the evergreen, we're able to go back to the table. However, there are two issues that we're going to have to consider. One is that City Council sits down tomorrow to vote on the budget for the next fiscal year. And there are numerous proposed amendments to cut taxes and reduce spending, which will, if passed, limit our ability to put more money on the table. And of course, we've already publicly discussed a potential significant tax rollback that would occur beginning with in January of 2016, which would impact the next budget to be negotiated. What was significant about this contract is that it was net neutral to the budget we're trying to pass. The 4% pay raise was offset by blackout periods and, or in essence, increased caps on overtime. We have a good handle on scheduled leave. What was driving our overtime costs under the previous contract was unscheduled guaranteed leave, and while the interim agreement put some restraints on that, the proposed contract really ratcheted it down, and so what they got in the proposed contract was a 4% raise. What we got was budget certainty and the belief that we would not have to park fire and EMS vehicles, or the so-called brownout option. But we're right back where we were, and we're going to be monitoring overtime on a daily and weekly basis to try to make sure that it stays within bounds, and that we communicate clearly and effectively to the rank and file firefighters if the budget begins to go into the red zone on overtime, that we're going to have to take steps to maintain it. I will be consulting with Fire Chief Garrison on the available options. I inquired of him last Friday when we began to have some concerns that the contract wouldn't pass as to what the options are. There are really not a lot of things we can do to severely limit overtime, bring the firefighter contract back into a budget. And I'll also say that if any of the significant revenue cuts pass council tomorrow, all city departments would have further budget cuts. But assuming that the firefighter budget is not further reduced by council action tomorrow, if overtime begins to exceed budget, our options are layoffs, running vehicles short, or changing to a 3-shift schedule for firefighters. I am not interested in laying off firefighters. I didn't lay off firefighters during the worst of the recession. I'm not interested in laying off firefighters now. I know the chief is adamantly opposed to running vehicles short-staffed. That would be the so-called 4 on a truck versus 3 on a truck. We are committed to 4 on a truck. I know the chief believes that that is critical to firefighter safety. So the remaining options are brownouts or changing the shift schedule. Ironically, one of the things that was in the proposed contract with Local 341 was a guarantee that we would not change the shift schedule, but it is a management prerogative to do that, and that may be something that we do if overtime begins to be a concern. So we look forward to hearing from Local 341 whether they want to continue the discussions.